Hey guys, Reconsider Simon. So I'm going to go a little bit woo today. I really wanted to discuss my own personal UFO experiences. Yeah, so it's been a big part of my journey, kind of from the very beginning of my spiritual journey, I think, which is why I want to talk about it. Um, I, I guess like even looking back as a child, I was kind of aware of the idea of like ETs and UFOs, do they exist, etc. And sometimes I found it a little bit frightening, if I've been honest, because I think a lot of the general culture makes people kind of scared of these concepts just because of the films and TV that you people see, which can be quite fear based. But I'd always look out at the stars and just imagine kind of seeing UFOs. So it was always there, that kind of like intuition of like what's happening out in the universe, kind of beyond humanity. And so yeah, kind of fast forwarding, I was living in London at the time, and I'd just come out of a long-term relationship as well. I'd also started to have issues with my health as well, and I was just searching for something else, something outside of like general work and living in London. So yeah, I found meditation. I'd found transcendental meditation, which is a type of meditation started by Maharishi, who was kind of connected to the Beatles in the 60s, etc. And it's a mantra based meditation. So yeah, I was doing this kind of short course in the evenings, and as part of that, I just started to be generally interested in meditation as a whole. So I started to sort of look for meditation videos on YouTube, and I stumbled across this video by this guy called Dr. Stephen Greer, and I'd never heard of him before. And he was talking about meditation, but a very weird meditation I'd never heard of before, which is him being in groups of people and essentially kind of remote viewing with their consciousness to then bring like UFOs into their space. They'd be out in the desert somewhere in America or in like a beautiful like rural location, and then he'd have all these very kind of vivid, amazing experiences with kind of lights in the sky, etc. So he was discussing that, which kind of blew my mind at the time. But he was also discussing other concepts in terms of like free energy as well, and then more kind of nefarious activity that we experience day to day on this planet as well. So these are all like big new concepts for me, and I just remember that particular day I was watching that video, and my mind was just blown, and my whole paradigm just kind of changed. And this was only like a few days, from me starting to meditate, really. So I then it's then spurred me on to kind of learn more about this topic. So I bought a book. It was called Beyond Top Secret, and it was written in a very journalistic way. It was written country by country, discussing the experiences people have had, and then giving radar data and then testimonies from very credible witnesses, people from the military or police, etc. And so again, it just kind of made me believe something was going on more than we're told. So I continued to carry reading on, more books, and also kind of finding more content on the internet, in terms of YouTube as well. And I'd actually moved away from London by this point, and I'd spent a period of time in Scotland. And I just randomly woken up one day, and I'm going to be vegan. So wasn't eating any kind of animal products at all. And then also I had stopped drinking any caffeine or any alcohol as well. And this went on for a number of months. And I was meditating, quite regularly as well. So this kind of leads up to the point where I was obviously interacting with a lot of like UFO and ET kind of content online, and also books. And a lot of this stuff kind of comes from the US. There's obviously such a huge movement of people and content coming from there. So it became like a point of reference. It's like, I really need to go to America. I felt like I needed to go to America and maybe potentially have experiences. because there is so much activity. There is activity everywhere, but for some reason in US and particular areas, you're kind of guaranteed to see stuff in the sky. So I was like, yeah, this would be a great opportunity for me to maybe have my own experience. And then I can't remember exactly how, but I became aware, obviously, of a conference there called Contact in the Desert, which is one of the largest, conferences in the world to do with ETs and UFOs. But not just that, it has a lot of other concepts in terms of like alternative archaeology and stuff. And it was based at the time in Joshua Tree in this like quite sort of desert location. It was a spiritual center, but it had like individual buildings everywhere, and you could kind of camp actually in the desert itself, and then kind of move from venue to venue. It had exterior locations where they had talks as well. So that was, this is the event that I bought tickets for. So I flew to California where it was, and then drove like 2 hours from Los Angeles to Joshua Tree. I bought a tent, pitched my tent up, and then I started to all of these kind of researchers and people I'd read about or seen on the internet. That a lot of them were at this particular venue, so it was an amazing experience for me to kind of mingle with people who had the same kind of thoughts and ideas that I did. So another aspect to the conference was the fact that they had various sky watching events. They had one that was created by I think a lady called Melinda Leslie, and then Dr. Stephen Greer, who was this original guy that kind of got me into these concepts initially. He was also doing a meditation and sky watching event as well. And this kind of ties into why I mentioned before that I kind of went vegan, and it was all accidental. It was all very natural. Like I had this like inkling that I needed to do this. And I think like people say, like, raise your vibration. I think at that point in time where I was very, high vibrational, and I was actually starting to see energy in the sky, which was, mad. I was like, what the hell is that? When I was looking up, never seen anything like it before. And I can only put it down that I was really being very, very clean with my diet and what I was drinking, etc. So, when I arrived in America for these sky watching events, had some really good, experiences in the sky, and it just confirmed for me even more visually like this is a big topic that needs to be investigated further. So I had these like amazing experiences in Los Angeles at this festival Contact in the Desert, and saw some amazing talks from various people as well. So it was a very inspirational event for me. And I can't quite remember the date, but I'd moved away from London. I moved to Germany for a year, and then I moved to Denmark for a year as well. And I really, really liked Denmark, and I was living in Copenhagen. And at the time, I had to move out the flat that I was living at the time, and I decided to move back briefly to England because I needed to work so I could pick up some freelance work. And my intention was then to move back to Copenhagen, but that actually didn't happen in the end. I ended up gravitating back to Brighton, which is a place that I went to university years and years ago. And so, yeah, I just by happy accident, a friend of mine had a flat that was available, so I kind of moved back there. And I was still meditating, and I'd sort of tried to various spiritual activities in Germany, and then also Denmark. I got into a bit of Buddhism as well, so I was searching for things, and it was just really nice coming back to this area, coming back to Brighton, to East Sussex, because it is quite an alternative place. And as a student, I lived in Brighton for many years after university as well. It's got an amazing nightlife, an amazing sort of music scene. So that was Brighton to me. It was all music. It was, quite a cool kind of trendy place, quite hedonistic as well. So that was my experience of Brighton. And then moving back, it was, I started to see this area in a completely different light. And because it was alternative, it has so much in terms of like spiritual activities, loads of different yoga studios and lots of different other spiritual methods for you to, go along and then practice with groups of people. But there are lots of healing modalities as well. So that's kind of helped me in terms of like my healing journey. So yeah, it was just an eye-opening experience coming back to this area and just kind of seeing it in a completely different alternative way. So yeah, but I started to connect with more people who were more spiritual. They were more shamanic based, more earth based people, which I think was important for me at the time because I was so cosmic and my head was so in the clouds and in the sky and the stars that I needed to be grounded more. So I think it was important that I was meeting these people at that particular time. And then, I'd obviously told you that I'd been to America and I had these experiences, but what I found is I was doing a lot of movement-based spirituality stuff like qigong and different types of yoga, etc. And I was connecting with these new people, but I started to see just a lot of things happening in the sky. By this point, I had like a few years of working out, what's a satellite, what's a plane, etc. And I was just having these very interesting experiences, like quite regularly, with things in the night skies, things flashing at me or powering up very, very brightly, and it was happening a lot. A really good experience was I travelled to my first sort of spiritual festival in Gloucester. I'd been there on my own, and I was meeting with people afterwards. I went there for the first day. No one was there that I knew, but I set up tent, and I remember looking out at the night sky and just being blown away. There's these like two massive light ships, and one just like powered up and then power down again. And before these, sightings would occur, I'd always have this inkling, this kind of little voice in my head, look up, and then I'd see stuff. And one of my new friends, they arrived at this festival, and we saw things together as well. And I was like, "Look, that's what I see." And even she was kind of blown away what it was in the sky. It was amazing. So these experiences like lights in the sky were continuing to happen on quite a regular basis. And I think this is 2 years from when I first been to Contact in the Desert. I decided to go a second time. So I bought tickets for that, but the location had changed at this point. It wasn't no longer in the desert. It would move to a kind of a hotel location, which is a bit of a shame because that, exterior location in the desert was really, really special. Um, but synchronistically, where they'd moved to, this hotel just happened to be a hotel 10 minutes down the road from where my auntie now lives. So that was incredibly convenient for me. But I had this crazy experience where I booked all these tickets, like I booked the flights. And also another part of this journey, I wanted to travel to not only Los Angeles, well, to California, to this Contact in the Desert. I also wanted to go to Mount Adams outside of Portland. There's this area called ESETI, which is started by James Gilliland. And it's well known for a lot of UFO activity, but just general kind of crazy activity as a whole. It's quite a high vibrational area, lots of sightings of Bigfoot, etc. So I'd booked tickets to go to this as well. And so I booked all of that. And then I remember waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And again, I had that same little voice in my head, like, look out the window. And then it was just this brilliant, bright white light just going over the top of the house. And I was so in awe of it. I walked out the front door, middle of the night, well, yeah, to early morning, sort of 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and just watched it go over the top of the house and down the street. And then I went back indoors again. And then 10 minutes later, I had exactly the same inclination to kind of look out the window. And there was another one. And I followed out the front door again. And this one just went off quickly, shot off. And for me, it was just like confirmation that, I'd booked these tickets, and yeah, it was just an incredible experience. So, I traveled back to Los Angeles. I stayed with my auntie, and I was going to this conference, Contact in the Desert again. Really good conference. Again, wasn't as exciting because in terms of like, I was missing the location, like as I mentioned, of the desert location originally where it used to be. But it was still good. So yeah, I went to that, and then I then left California and flew into Portland, and I went to the ESETI. I hired a car, drove there, rural location, completely different temperature, very cold, and I was staying in a tent there as well, and I was freezing at each night I was trying to sleep. Um, and I was there specifically. Again, they had like a sky watching events every single night. But it was funny because I actually got more into the actual nature of the place because in the UK, I mean, sometimes in Scotland you get wilderness, but it's very hard to find proper wilderness in the UK. It's so overdeveloped. But in the US, like other, big countries, they had vast areas of just like complete rural nature where you could actually properly get lost in. And so I was just in awe of that. And where the ranch is, it kind of overlooks this big mountain, which just has lots of kind of lights coming out of it. Even parts of the mountain kind of glow as well. Lots of weird things happen. So I really wanted to sort of travel closer to this mountain, get a closer look. So in the daytime, I actually drove there and did some quite epic walks around the area. And yeah, it was crazy. The first time I was there, I was like walking up as far as I could get, but it was actually getting colder and colder as I got up and it started to snow. So there was a point, it was too much snow around, so I couldn't really continue. But I literally walked off that mountain just singing. I was in such an amazing mood. There was some energy about that place that was really affecting me in a positive way. So yeah, it all became about the nature there for me, really. And because I was walking so much in the daytime, I was actually really tired in the evening. I saw some of the sky watching events, but by this time I'd seen so many lights in the sky before this anyway. Yeah, I was kind of, I didn't see as much essentially, but it was still amazing to be there. I had an initial lot of UFO experiences in America, but as I said, I started to have a lot of more profound experiences in the UK. I have a connection, my family with Scotland, so we go there quite a lot. And I'd gone up there for a very brief period of time during the summer, and I was with my dad, and we were walking from the house to this restaurant. It's probably about 15, 20 minutes walk. And it was still bright. It was in the evening, but it was still, pretty daylight. And again, I had that kind of mental inclination in my mind, turn around and look up. And then there was this bright white star, like etheric, massive, massive star in the sky. Again, I said it was daylight. And I was like, oh, Dad, look at that. And it wasn't a plane, it wasn't a helicopter, there was no noise. And my dad's hilarious because he's quite close-minded to this sort of stuff. He sort of acknowledged it, but he wouldn't acknowledge like it was at what was happening really. And as we started to kind of walk to the restaurant, this thing started to move slowly. It like followed us. It felt like it was following us really. And yeah, as I said, it was just such a bright, bright white light in the sky, and considering it was daylight as well, and considering it was like initially was hanging there in the air and then started to move as we moved. Yeah, I think it was one of the most powerful experiences, and it was with my dad. But my dad and his he just refused to see what he was seeing. It was hilarious. So, I mean, those are a lot of my most kind of profound, powerful experiences. And what's interesting, that was around about a 2 year period. It was probably about 3 or 4 years ago now. And I don't see anything anymore. And, I miss it. And I actually live further out of Brighton. I live in a quite a rural location in a village. So I go for walks quite regularly. And especially at night time, there's no real light pollution here either. So you see a lot of stars. You see the night skies quite easily, and I still don't see anything. Yeah, it's really weird how it was a very defined period of time. Year, 2 years, I was just seeing stuff all the time, and now I just don't. It's just kind of stopped. I have no idea whether it will start up again. Like I said, I do kind of miss it, but maybe it was right for me at the time, and the fact it was just confirmation that we are part of a galactic family, and for me to kind of carry on my journey, that's the kind of takeaway that I have. But it's just interesting how it's just completely stopped. And I think like more people might have these sort of experiences if they just looked up. I think a lot of people just walk through life just robotically going about their day, not really sort of looking at their environment or even really looking up at the sky. So I think if people start to do that, they might start to see more things. They might have experiences themselves. But in terms of me, like I am quite anchored more in the earth, and so a lot of my practices are more earth based. And I definitely the ET UFO thing is still like a massive part. But I'm on this journey of like healing myself, and then hopefully contributing to helping the earth and humanity as a whole. So that's an important job for everyone. it's interesting to kind of consider why I was having those experiences. Is that, you know, my future self? Is it like star families that I was connected to in a previous life? Or was I just emitting a particular frequency at the time that was just, they were just waving back at me cosmically? I don't know. I've no idea. I can't answer those questions. But, it was a beautiful period of time when I was having those experiences. So, yeah. Well, yeah, it's always been an important thing for me to share that, I think, because it's such an intrinsic part of my spiritual journey. I think the whole concept, the galactic family, the larger collective that maybe exists outside our sphere, it's really important. I think it will be really important for humanity as well. So I think it's quite important for me to discuss it. But yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. And yeah, please like, share, and subscribe if you feel. And I will catch you up again very soon. Thank you.